Hello, I'm Noel. This is Antonia from Boxtail Soup. We're once again in the studio because we've just been carrying on with work on casting the runes, all of the set and puppet making that needs to be done for the show. This week, I kind of feel like, well, we'll get to it in a moment, but I kind of feel like I haven't got much to show. I sort of feel like I'd be at the bottom of the class because...
I don't think that's very fair. I think the trouble is, at this early stage, there's a lot of working out and figuring out that needs to be done, particularly for the main bits of the set. Because as we've said before, it's very boring of us to keep repeating it, but having to make the set flat pack adds always an extra, at least day's worth of thinking and head scratching, mainly for Noel. I just chip in if he looks too forlorn, sat on the floor with a tape measure. But he... has been doing all of that, haven't you? You've been figuring stuff out a lot this week.
Yes. So we'll come to that in a minute.
But first we'll do puppet progress, I guess. So last week we had, I think Gayton, this one here, was just a frame last week. The train driver and Mrs. Johnson, these two, I can't remember. Had I started on the hair at all last week?
I'm not sure, actually.
I don't think I had.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. Anyway, so they've had hair. The hair is finished now on these two. I've got a couple more little tweaks to do to this guy here. Yeah. But we'll start with him, I guess. So Noel wanted to give him a messy beard. So I did what he asked for. He's got a sort of messy, slightly scruffy, as if he kind of can't really be bothered to look after it properly kind of beard.
Yeah, I just had the feeling that it might just be a bit patchy and he was just generally a little bit dishevelled.
The eyebrows need a little bit, just tweaking, they're nearly done. So he's very nearly there. I'm quite pleased with him, but he needs a hat. So that's the next thing. And then whether there's a little bit of hair that pokes out from under his hat or not, I don't really know until we put his train driver's hat on. We're not sure about that one, whether we'll leave that as a permanent fixture on his head or whether it'll have to come off. We'll see.
Again, sometimes packing is a consideration for that as well, because if you're making a hat that has a brim or something that sticks out quite a long way, it can just make it more difficult to pack.
Yeah.
So again, that's sort of...
unwieldy shapes.
Yeah, that comes into the
we tried using so when we first did the show, I played the train conductor, in fact, with a sort of very basic train conductor's hat on my head. So we tried to use that hat to see whether we could. It just doesn't really work because obviously their heads ultimately are not the right shape. They don't go all the way around for a start. So to kind of manipulate that to fit his head would be more trouble than it's worth. So we're going to make one out of paste box card, we think, and then papier-mâché. So Gayton, here he is. So got his hair finished off. So the hair is, as usual, same as with the Christmas Carol puppets and everything. Just strands of paper, papier-mâchéed onto the head. Well.
Yeah, he looks lovely. He's got a very sweet face. And then I was really keen, I mean, you like the idea as well, but I was really keen that he should have some little bits of hair that are really unruly and just stick up all the time. I don't know, it's quite characterful, I thought.
Sort of imagine him
managed to do that very nicely. Yeah, those are the bits that you constantly
every morning try to flatten it in the mirror. Yeah. And then Mrs. Johnson here, she has probably one of the most elaborate hairstyles I've done because I wanted to give her an updo. So I had to build it. We can probably show you some photographs of it in progress. I built it with sort of as if she'd rolled her hair underneath, so there are these rolls of paper underneath here. And when I first showed Noel that first layer, he got a bit confused and was like, she sort of just looks like a friendly grandma. And I said, don't worry, there's a plan. So then lots of strands of hair then sort of rolled over the top of that, then to make this sort of bun at the top. Her glasses will need colouring in, obviously. We haven't decided what colour they're going to be yet. But she's basically finished. And then obviously they will need bodies.
The other thing that you're going to do is put in the section that will allow them to connect to their body. So into the back of the head, as we've shown, on previous vlogs when we've been making similar styles of puppets, they have a piece that goes into the back that allows the ribbon for the body to hook over so that it rests on your hand when you're holding the puppet. And I think you're also going to put in...
They have a piece at the top of their head as well, which means that they can hook onto a stand safely. Yeah. So they'll go into today, I would think, with those two. And then once the hat is sorted on this one. And then finally, see, this is one of the things you definitely did do this week. is you made Karswell's frame.
Yeah, that's right. For those who say I did nothing.
So he took a little while, actually, didn't he? We had to rejig him a couple of times.
Yeah. So, I think in the last vlog I was saying I was going to have a picture of Charles Dance in front of me. And indeed, I had several. So I tried to look at what it was that made his face so kind of striking. He's got very strong cheekbones and a strong kind of nose. So I tried to put some of that into it. When you're creating the frame initially, it's you do the best you can to kind of to imagine the end result. But obviously, it's not until it's really covered and it's all put together that you have a sense of what the proportions, what it's going to look like in the end. And also, there are some bits where you just have to forge ahead, because once you've started to build stuff onto the shape of the head and you've started with a certain height, after a certain point, it's kind of easier to do what we did and alter it later. So, in fact, can I pick him up again?
If you want to.
Yeah, in fact...
Why are you asking?
I don't know. He had, we might have some pictures, he had a much longer chin. So this was much longer down here, and his jaw was much longer. And he had a slightly shorter head. So once he was covered, he didn't necessarily look bad even.
No, he just looked a bit weird.
He looked a bit uncanny, a little bit odd. So what we did in the end was we took a few photos and just used some kind of photo editing software to shift the jawline and the top of the head around a little bit, which makes it a little bit easier to find one that...
Because it was tricky, wasn't it, to work out what was wrong. There was something that wasn't quite right about the head, and we weren't sure whether it was the positioning of the mouth. Firstly, the nose was too big.
Yes.
So that got reduced down first.
Yeah, I cut off the end of the nose and put that back in and shortened that.
And then we thought maybe the mouth was too high, didn't we? But then actually, when we looked at it again the following day, we realised that the problem was the length of the chin versus the length of the forehead.
So then what I ended up doing was actually just taking a knife and cutting clean through all of this section here and all of this section here. And then basically for here, I put some cardboard struts in and extended it slightly. And here I just pushed it up and then taped it back over. And then Antonia's kind of seamlessly covered it over with papier-mâché again. And again, that's one of the lovely things about it. Now that we're much more confident in working with it as well, it's so easy to change it like that it didn't really take that long at all to alter it once we'd decided what we wanted to do.
And it was definitely worth it, because he makes so much more sense now, his face.
Yeah, I mean, I think he looks
because it was
great.
funny, I think it was when I started to do the eyes that we realised there was something wrong with the proportion of the head generally. The eyes were a little too far sunk in as well, so we had to bring those forward a bit. But that's easy, and that's something that it's better that they're sunk too far and that you bring them forward, and the other way around is a little bit more tricky to do. And then it took us a little while just to decide on the shape of the eye, to make sure that the eyes, because we wanted them sunk fairly far back because it gives him that slightly creepy quality. And also the eyes, when they're sunk in like that and they're lidded at the top and the bottom, that's what gives the illusion that they're following you. Even though then obviously they're not physically moving, but they are. It looks like they're following you. So we're pleased with him now. The next stage with him is to make him a hat. He's going to have a sort of fedora style, I guess. Is that the kind of hat? I think it is. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, a kind of brimmed hat, and he is going to be a different style to these three. So he's not going to have the same thing for a body and everything, because his body will be a slightly different style. And
as you've noticed, of course, he's not got a moving mouth, which is very deliberate, because he's supposed to be a little bit other. So good progress with the puppets generally. And it's just these 4 so far for this show. We'll see whether there will be any additions in rehearsals and things. And then meanwhile, also, you've been looking at the set. So Noel made a little working model of the door.
Yeah, so as we were talking about last time, I made a set model before, which we showed a few photos of, which was to scale, but it was relatively small, and it was more so that we could move the shapes around. With the door, because it's kind of the central piece of set, and because it's important that it looks solid and it has, that it just that it looks good, I felt that the only way that I could be certain of figuring out the distances and the certain shapes that I needed was to make a slightly bigger model. So that's what I did here. I might try and get some slightly closer photos so you can see it more clearly, but it's all about solving those problems where we've got to be able to pack it down, take it apart and fit it into the trunk. So none of these pieces of wood that make up the frame can be longer than 87 centimetres, for example, and they can't be deeper than about 48 centimetres. So that really limits what you can do in terms of the pieces that you can put together. This door itself as well will be cut into 4 different pieces, so that'll be 4 separate pieces that go together to make the actual main door itself. And then on the back it will be held together by batons that connect it together and stop it from wibbling about. And then for the frame itself, yeah, we've got this made up of, there's a long piece of wood here that's hinged so we can fold it into the trunk, and there's a big C piece with rigid joints at the top, which hopefully will give it a bit more stability. And then at the bottom here, these will come away, these sort of little feet sections that would stick onto the back and obviously stop it from falling over. We'll put a couple of weights on there, and then hopefully it will all work as intended. I have actually managed to get the frame itself done this week as well. So we had a look at that yesterday. I put it up and put it together for the first time, and it looks good, right? It's a good size and it stands up. It needs correcting at the moment because it just lists ever so slightly. But
that's just because you haven't secured the right angles.
Yeah, I knew that would be an issue. Yeah, so yeah, you just need something to brace the corners and stop them from wiggling from side to side.
So there's probably a little bit more head scratching to be done over that. It's always tricky when you want something to look, as you say, you want it to look solid. You don't want to kind of destroy the illusion to the audience that it's a solid, good door, but that you need it to pack down. And it's very difficult, especially when now, in the beginning, we didn't use large pieces of set for the shows, but now we've grown a little, and having a bit of height, we know, just makes the show feel that much more substantial and that much larger. And then there's also cool stuff that you can do with it. So, and we've got lots of good plans for transformations for this set, which we're excited about. And this door will be important. So, yeah, it was a lot of figuring out to do. And I think you've done a very good job, Noel Byrne.
Thank you very much.
So that is our week, and we will be carrying on really with the same sort of stuff next week. And then I think we've got one more week of making before we rehearse. That doesn't mean we have to have everything finished by then. We never do that. We always have stuff so that we've got everything, at least something that we can play with for each of the objects or puppets or whatever that we want to have for the show. Because in rehearsals, invariably, we realise we either don't need something or we need something to do something different than we thought or whatever. So, but that's exciting. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you are enjoying the vlogs, please do give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel. Welcome to new subscribers, and we will see you again next time.